Thank you very much for calling me Joe Patterson and not Jim Patterson. Appreciate that. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Happy Valentine's Day and failure to all of us who didn't wear red. Let me be clear on my measure, AB 18. It creates no new crime, nor does it require any additional penalties, charges associated with selling or trafficking fentanyl. AB 18 will require persons convicted of or pleading guilty or no contest to trafficking fentanyl and various other opiates and narcotics to receive a written advisement that if a person dies as a result of overdose, the manufacturer or distributor can be charged with murder or involuntary manslaughter. We all know how lethal fentanyl is, but let's visualize it. This right here is a penny. Obviously, it's blown up to the size of my head, so you can see it. But this little amount of fentanyl is a lethal dose of fentanyl. The whole world has come full circle. When I was a legislative staffer myself, my former boss, Todd Spitzer, lost his former chief of staff to a drunk driver. The following year, he would team up with Assemblymember and Democrat Nicole Parra to enact the Ambrose Act, named after Steve Ambrose, his former chief of staff and an Orange County city councilman who had his life taken by a driver who was under the influence. But that law is starkly different than this proposed law. Today, every single person renewing their driver's license has to check a box indicating they are informed they can be charged with murder for killing someone while driving under the influence. In the case of AB 18, we're only talking about people who are actually selling and trafficking in drug that has no bona fide recreational use. Just like the existing DUI advisement provided to drivers renewing their license, AB 18 will give law enforcement with an additional tool to prosecute drug traffickers in our communities. It does not require a murder charge. The bill is titled Alexandra's Law and inspired by a young lady who was poisoned by this drug. Her father, Matt Capilouto, has been championing this legislation. Unable to get justice in California, the Biden administration took the case and prosecuted Alexandra's murderer. The federal government under President Biden has been stepping up and even issued a rare public health warnings. I appreciate that. The only reason why I have an idea what fentanyl even is because of one of my neighbors, teen Zach Didier, died from taking a fake prescription pill laced with fentanyl that he bought off social media. It's scary to say, but I have already warned my 10 and 8-year-old children about taking pills or candy from others, and my 2 younger children will get the same advisement from me. After publicly supporting the efforts of Zach's parents, I learned that my cousin's death was also due to fentanyl poisoning. As the author of AB 18, I want to make it clear, the goal of this policy is not to add punishment to the opioid-dependent person, but rather to ensure that the drug dealers and traffickers are held accountable. In fact, this legislation is only one of 4 pieces of legislation that I'll introduce. We have life-saving measures like Narcan in schools, and we'll be introducing legislation to educate parents of the dangers of opioids, as well as another piece on rehabilitation for people in prison. I want California to join the rest of the United States, including the Biden administration, and hold dealers and traffickers accountable for their actions. Today, I have Zach's father, Chris Didier, and Cindy De Silva, San Joaquin's Deputy District Attorney, to testify in support of AB 18. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, Chair and members. My name is Cindy De Silva. I'm a Deputy District Attorney with San Joaquin County, and I am proud and honored to speak to you this morning in support of AB 18, which is a common sense educational measure. In 1979, an intoxicated driver left a bar in Redding and got into his vehicle and killed a mother and her small child. As a result of that, his name was Watson. A case went to court, and he ended up being the reason that this very legislature passed Vehicle Code Section 23593, which requires judges to tell people convicted of driving under the influence that DUI behavior is inherently dangerous to human life, and that if they ever do it again and their activities result in somebody dying, they can be charged and prosecuted for that. AB 18 essentially does the same thing. 2 nights before Christmas in 2019, Matt Capilouto's daughter, Alexandra, who was only 20 years old, thought she was going to be taking an oxycodone pill. It turned out it was an illicitly manufactured fentanyl pill, and she died as a result. And we're going to hear from somebody that's going to explain that that unfortunately is not uncommon anymore. This bill is titled Alexandra's Law after her. What this law would do, like the legislator said, would not introduce any new penalties or anything. It simply educates the person convicted of selling or trafficking or manufacturing fentanyl to let them know that that activity is very, very dangerous. And it also would let them know that if they do it again and kill somebody, what they could be charged with. If anything, that might prevent some people from dying and prevent some people from further incarceration. So I heartily request that this august body vote yes, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, everyone, for your respectful attention. My name is Chris, and I am Zach's dad. 2 days after Christmas in 2020, I found my 17-year-old son appearing to be asleep in his bedroom but not breathing. Losing a child from a danger we had not heard of before is an unspeakable loss and has brought debilitating torment to our family. Zach was sold a fake prescription pill on Snapchat that contained illicit fentanyl despite having no history of drug use. Zach died from fentanyl poisoning. Zach was a self-taught musician, straight-A student, accomplished athlete, lead role in his high school musical, and active in scouting. And since his passing, Zach was accepted into 5 UCs, including UCLA. Like so many, Zach showed promise to bring innovation and progress to our world in a beautiful way. Instead, he was robbed of that chance. The DEA estimates over 98% of pills sold on social media are fake, and 6 out of every 10 pills have the potential to be lethal. CDC reports over 73,000 lives were lost from illicit fentanyl in a recent 12-month period. This is about 200 deaths every single day, or a fatality every 7 minutes. Imagine an airline crash in our country every single day for over a year. California is a hotspot state, and evidence shows there is a clear public safety danger here, and only worsening. Even more powerful illicit synthetics are emerging, and social media is the #1 platform for dealers to deceptively market and peddle poisonous products. This non-punitive measure does not place those struggling with addiction at greater risk of incarceration. Rather, this bill's focus is to give reasonable warning to drug traffickers who are knowingly and willingly selling products made of illicit fentanyl for a simple profit. The nature of this crisis should allow the entire Assembly the opportunity to study and implement reasonable accountability measures to better protect our community. Fentanyl changes everything, so please vote in support of AB 18. Remember, a fentanyl fatality every 7 minutes. Think about it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I know it's difficult. Thank you for coming before us. Thank you. Any other witnesses in support?
Mr. Chair, members, Brandon Epp on behalf of the Los Angeles County Sheriff in support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kim Stone Advocacy on behalf of the California District Attorneys Association in support.
Thank you.
Audrey Ratajczak from Cruise Strategies on behalf of the Orange County District Attorney's Office.
Mr. Chairman, Carl London on behalf of Crime Victims United, also in strong support.
Good morning. Julio De Leon for the Riverside County Sheriff's Department and Sheriff Chad Bianco in support.
Thank you.
Pastor Brandon Campbell from Northern California, Director of the California Capital Connection, connecting Baptist churches to their legislators in support.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Matthew Seiberling on behalf of the California Peace Officers Association and the Association for Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs in support. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Ryan Sherman with Riverside Sheriff Association and Police Officer Associations of Arcadia, Burbank, Claremont, Corona, Culver City, Fullerton, Inglewood, LA Schools, Newport Beach, Pomona, Palos Verdes, Riverside, Santa Ana, Upland, Placer County Deputy Sheriff Association, California Coalition of School Safety Professionals, all in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other witnesses in support? Now we'll hear from witnesses in opposition. 5 minutes each, 5 minutes total, not each, and split it up any way you want.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and members. Alicia Benavides-Lewis here on behalf of Drug Policy Alliance in respectful opposition to AB 18. Drug Policy Alliance is a national organization advocating for drug policies that are grounded in science, compassion, health, and human rights. Our organization understands the impact that drug use can have on the lives of users, their families, and those who've lost one to overdose. Since 2017, we recognize the number of fatal drug overdoses has risen 110% in California. And in 2020, at least 9,000 Californians have died from drug-related overdose. We know this loss is real, and every community in our state has been impacted, and some of us personally have also been impacted. However, this bill does not reflect the path that is needed to address this crisis. It only proposes using an unsupported practice that runs counter to the way our justice system operates for criminal proceedings. As noted in the committee analysis, substantial evidence demonstrates that criminal penalties, such as those in this bill, will not reduce the availability or use of drugs, nor prevent overdose. The vast majority of people involved in drug supplying are low level. While the criminal legal system purports to focus on high-level sellers, supply-side criminalization disproportionately impacts the lowest level people on the supply side. Increased penalties, such as those in AB 18, echoed the failed war on drugs policies enacted during the 80s and 90s around crack cocaine that disproportionately impacted people of color, overcrowded prisons, and cost lives. That is why DPA stands firm in urging the state to prioritize investment in public health approaches with life-saving harm reduction services that are proven to save lives by directly reaching people at highest risk of overdose and evidence-based low-barrier treatment access for people who use drugs. California voters have signaled again and again their preference for using a health approach to drug offenses and their desire to unwind the failed war on drugs. Committees in both houses to this legislature have repeatedly rejected nearly identical versions of this proposal. Reversing course at this time and going back to overcriminalization will not only increase stigma and marginalization, but will do little to address this health crisis. So for these reasons, we urge your no vote.
Good morning, Glenn Backus for the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights in respectful opposition. I would posit that we're in the wrong committee, that the solutions for the overdose crisis are in health committee and in a health budget. Further criminalization will not reduce lives, will not save lives. It won't reduce the amount of drugs that are being sold. It won't prevent overdose. And this is not a fentanyl bill. It applies to all controlled substances. Crack cocaine, powder cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, pills, everything. A person who has a prior conviction for sharing, furnishing, selling, possessing for sale a small amount of any of these drugs would be subject to the possibility of further punishment if they're convicted again. It's not hard for a very poor person or a person struggling with addiction to get a possession for sale charge and conviction. This bill would provide, if they are convicted again of possession for sale of any of these substances in which a person dies accidentally, that they could be subject to a murder charge and it would be easier to get that sentence, that very long sentence applied. Let's talk about fiscal cost, what our role is as policymakers about where we invest the people's money. It costs $112,000 per year to add an additional 1 year for prison. But it only costs $6,000 in some for buprenorphine treatment for 1 year. Or methadone for 1 year is less than $7,000 compared to $112,000. So you can put 17 people in buprenorphine treatment, reducing the use of opioids, including fentanyl. Or you can put 19 people in methadone, or you can put one person in prison for another year, and that has no positive effect. So we would ask that you invest in health, invest in prevention, treatment, and harm reduction. I'm sorry, but this bill will not help. It will waste time, it will waste money, and it will waste lives. For these reasons, we are opposed.
Thank you. Are there any other witnesses in opposition? Name and organization.
Ignacio Hernandez on behalf of the California Attorneys for Criminal Justice, also in opposition.
Leslie Caldwell Houston on behalf of the California Public Defenders Association, in opposition.
Danica Rodarmel on behalf of Initiate Justice and the San Francisco Public Defender's Office, in opposition.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. Micah Doctoroff on behalf of ACLU California Action, also in opposition.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? And I'll bring it back to the committee members for any questions, comments. Mr. Lackey.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is not the first time I've heard your story. I'm very sorry for what happened. I think we all are, no matter where we are on this issue. I'm having a hard time understanding the opposition because it's clearly not as advertised in the statement by the defense here. This focuses on sellers, not users. So why you say it doesn't belong in this committee is beyond my understanding. This is a sales statute, clearly. It's an educational piece, and it only applies if there's a repeat offense. How in the world do you oppose that? You're telling somebody that if you do this again, there are serious consequences to the point that you're responsible for the death of this individual. I don't understand the opposition because it's an educational measure and it's all focused on prevention, which I think everybody up here supports both of those pieces. So I'm having a hard time connecting to the opposition, and I know it's not likely to succeed, but I want you to at least think about what you're doing here, folks, by rejecting this. You're excusing this kind of conduct and saying selling doesn't deserve the consequences that I believe that they're mitigating and they're doling out to these people unknowingly. This particular substance is unique because a lot of the people don't know what they're getting. That is so nefarious that I can't believe it doesn't shock your conscience, because it certainly does mine. And I'm very, very sorry for this victim's circumstance. And I think everybody in here is at least sorry for that. I do believe that. And our hearts go out to you, and I hope that we can do something about it. This is an opportunity, I think, in a very balanced way. So I'm very proud that you brought this forward, and I will clearly be supporting it.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Ortega.
First, thank you for coming today. I do want to acknowledge your son, and as a mother myself, this is heartfelt and, deeply troubling. So I did want to thank you for coming today. I know it's not easy.
Thank you.
I do have a couple of facts. I do know that about 200 people a day are dying in the U.S. because of overdoses on fentanyl. In my home district recently, there was a home where they found 2,500 pills that could have killed up to 5 million people. So the fentanyl crisis is definitely something that we are all trying to figure out and figure out a way to stop it, keep our youth alive, educate our communities, and hold people accountable. And this is why I'm supporting Assemblymember Patterson's other bills around fentanyl and making sure that we have ways to keep our youth alive and our schools educated on the issue that's happening. However, today I'm opposing this bill because of what was mentioned earlier and going back to our authors, our chairman's statements where we cannot go backwards in terms of harsher sentencing for things like drug trafficking that are not likely to reduce what's happening in our streets. But I did want to thank you and give you my sincere condolences and totally understand what's happening on our streets. Thank you.
Mr. Burr.
Yes, I also wanted to tell you how bad I feel about your son, and it's clear that we need to do more to understand how to respond to the fentanyl crisis, which is having a really horrific impact on our community and kids in our community in particular. Unfortunately, I won't be able to support this measure because it's just very, very broad. It isn't just about sale. It's about, relates to when someone not only sells, but furnishes, gives away, administers. You can see how this would be used in many cases, and it doesn't also apply to fentanyl. It applies to various controlled substances and a broad array of substance use. And so, I can see how this bill could be used against LGBTQ kids who may have had nothing to do with fentanyl being given this warning, or low-income kids who've just given a pill to another friend, and at some point there's something that happens later. And so I just think this bill is really, really broad, and I don't believe that this is the kind of approach that we need to address the fentanyl crisis. I'm sorry about this. I think we should be looking for, as Assemblymember Ortega said, we should be looking for other ways to address the fentanyl crisis, but I just think this is too broad. So thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Bryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here and sharing your testimony again. And thank you to our new colleague, Mr. Patterson. 3-4 years ago, I got a call around Thanksgiving. My little brother was found unresponsive on the pavement in San Diego because he had overdosed on something that was laced with fentanyl. He was unhoused at the time. I'm not sure what he was intending to take, but it wasn't fentanyl, or maybe it even was. He was revived and is still alive today, but it's something that I think about pretty regularly as we think about the crisis that's taking over our communities. As was mentioned by our other colleagues, this is a public health crisis. And even an advisory that reminds you that you still might be hit with features from the war on drugs that we know has failed, I think creates the conditions that allow us to divert from the real conversation we should be having. And I think it's a conversation that you've clearly demonstrated that you want to have in your time here in the legislature. And so to the extent that you and I can have those conversations, I want to be helpful. I can't support this today, but I can see the thoughtfulness in it, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other comments? You may close, Mr. Patterson.
Well, thank you very much. Just a couple things real fast. What we know is that programs that are going on right now are not currently working. In fact, I'd say it's probably doing the opposite. It's complete failure. And we have to think a little bit differently about what we're doing. And Assemblymember Bryan, I'm pleased that your brother recovered, and that's a sad story, and but happy that he made it. But I also am happy, more than happy, to narrow it to opioids, and only those, make it clear that it's only applying to those selling and trafficking opioids. But let me be clear, this bill does not increase penalties at all. In fact, current law allows people to be charged with murder. This is just giving an advisement. In fact, DAs are charging for murder. This just gives more discretion, actually. And lastly, I just want to publicly acknowledge both Chris Didier and Laura Didier. They've been educating kids and families, such as myself, on this tragedy that we have. They were just at the State of the Union, and they've been invited by the administration to be up at the DEA, and just thankful to have them. So thank you. And with that, I ask for your aye vote. I'm sure I changed all your minds, right?
And I too want to thank you, Mr. Patterson, and your witnesses especially. The fact that just about everybody commented tells you how serious we're taking this, how we thought through everything that we're going to vote on. And your story only made it more real to us. And so again, it's brave to come and speak before this body. I've been on that side before, so I know what it's like. And so I commend you for being here. So it is something we need to look at. Yes, it has to be a public health. I think we have not done enough on public health, and that's why it's not moved as well as it should, and we need to put more resources. I think if we work together to come up with public health alternatives, we might be able to put a dent in this and hopefully end the scourge of fentanyl poisoning. It is so important right now that we declared state of emergency on this as a public health crisis and move accordingly and provide all the resources we can to make this happen and to provide all of the tools that are needed so that people aren't using drugs. Look, when you're on drugs, there is no one and done solution to somebody on drugs. And that's what bothers me the most, that telling someone stop it, especially someone that's been on drugs or has a drug problem, sometimes takes 7, 8 times to get off of it. And so telling someone, you know, it could be really harsh if you do this again. And then later on, judges and DAs use that admonishment to enhance or to further prosecution and to fill up prisons. I think that's what you're hearing, and that people want to, like, I believe when we take the vote, that most of the members want to move toward how do we get to public health safety solutions. And I think what you're hearing from the members here, there's a willingness to work on that, to make that happen. And so unfortunately, I'm going to ask for a no vote. Is there a motion?
So moved.
On AB 18 by Assemblymember Joe Patterson, the motion is due pass to the Appropriations Committee. Jones Sawyer.
No.
Jones Sawyer, no. Alanis. Aye. Alanis, aye. Bonta.
No.
Bonta, no. Bryan.
Not voting.
Bryan, not voting. Lackey.
Aye.
Lackey, aye. Ortega. No. Ortega, no. Santiago. Zabur. Zabur, no.
Mr. Chairman, could I have a reconsideration? I won't bring it back in the same form, I promise you.
You can ask for reconsideration. Reconsideration is
Thank you
granted.
very much.
If there's no objection, we will grant it by unanimous acclamation.
Thank you.
Thank you.